Hi everyone, it's me, Elliot from Pro-Moto, and I just want to spend just a couple of minutes talking about um, battery contactors, which apply to every electric vehicle, whether it's hybrid, it's plug-in hybrid, full electric. Uh, and the reason why I want to highlight this is to give you an idea of the knowledge and the skills you require to understand how these vehicles switch on and off. We all know about ICE vehicles and the fuel pump has to run to make sure the engine runs and stuff like this. And this is pretty much the same is that unless we get the battery to work or switch on, of course, nothing's going to work as far as the electric vehicle system is concerned. And that applies to hybrids, plug-ins and full electrics. So the principle is always the same. But however, as you probably guessed, some vehicle manufacturers do it a slightly different way. So we need to understand how each vehicle or each manufacturer switches the battery on and switches the battery off. Now you're probably thinking, well, it should be quite simple, just switch a couple of relays on, but that's not always the case. We've got to be mindful that if we've got any malfunction external to the battery, if we switch the battery on, it's probably going to damage something or even cause some serious damage to either the battery or the components, a short circuit or whatever it is. So there's some preconditions prior to switching the battery on to make sure that externally from the battery, everything is safe, it's going to work properly. We also need to make sure that we don't damage the battery in the same process. We look at lithium-ion batteries, which most electric vehicles have in the batteries. We do still have some hybrid vehicles that have nickel metal hydride. So the principle of protecting the battery is pretty much the same. We don't want to load the battery up and under voltage it if we're starting to switch the battery on, because that may damage the battery over time. And you imagine how many times do we switch the car on and off? It's going to be in the tens of thousands of times during its lifetime. So we need to protect the battery and external components whenever we switch the battery on, and in some cases when we switch the battery off. And of course, if we've got any malfunctions, these relays, we need to make sure the relays are working properly. So there are a number of functions that happen every time that we switch the battery on and off. Now, I'm not going to go into detail because obviously I'd like you to come on one of our courses so you can get a good understanding and a good practical experience of how these batteries, how they switch on and off. We'll use oscilloscopes during the courses, we'll use multimeters and we'll track how these batteries switch on, and we can identify the different methods that manufacturers use, which is great. So here's an example for you. Now we have some number of relays inside the battery, and there normally are three. One is on the negative side, one's on the positive side, and we have a third pre-charge relay. Okay, and this is key to making sure that our battery is switched on in a gentle way to make sure we don't damage anything. And it's also used to make sure that we check that the relays are working properly. Now, some manufacturers choose to orientate their pre-charge circuit or relay on the negative side of the battery and sometimes on the positive side of the battery. It makes no difference. The checks and functions are going to be the same. They just might happen in a slightly different order than we've seen before. So in this case here, we're looking at a positive pre-charge battery operation. And what it's trying to do is to identify and switch on the battery via the relays to make sure that either the positive or the negative isn't welded or it's shut closed, because clearly it wants to make sure it's not going to damage anything. Okay, and once it's happy that it's done that, it will go through a pre-charge operation. Now, not all kind of checks and measures are done when we start the battery up, because there's only certain functions we can do. So what it does is when it switches the battery off, it also checks what it hasn't checked when it starts the battery up. So it's almost like, when you think about it, we always switch a battery off before we switch it on. So it does some checks prior to switching the battery off. So when we switch the battery on the next time, it finalizes all the checks to make sure everything's happy. And if things are happy, which most of the time it will be, then the battery will start up and the customer can now drive the vehicle. And the reason why I kind of labour this point is that if we understand how the battery starts or switches on and off, if there is a malfunction or if the vehicle won't start, understanding the process and the events that happen will start to allow you to identify why does it not want to switch on. Which, as you know, when you're diagnosing a fault or trying to diagnose a problem with a vehicle, understanding the process kind of leads us to understand what is wrong with the vehicle and make sure that we fix the vehicle first time. If we look at something completely different, if we look at a negative pre-charge circuit, whilst it does the same checks, but it does it in a different order, okay? So we look at, say, the negative pre-charge will be in a certain different operation to make sure the battery switches on and off and make sure it does it without any faults. And it also checks to make sure the contactors aren't welded. So the process is slightly different. However, all the checks are still made. So be careful you understand, and you can identify whether the vehicle has a positive pre-charge circuit relay in it or has a negative pre-charge circuit relay in it. That way, if you use an oscilloscope and you're trying to understand why does not the battery want to start up, at some point in the events that the system is trying to start the battery up, it will halt that process. And if it halts the process at a certain sequence, then we can start to make some assumptions or some diagnosis as to what is the real problem with the vehicle. Is it external to the battery? Is it internal to the battery? So there's a few little kind of ideas of what, how important it is to understand how battery operation is. So these relays mounted inside the battery are key. They make sure that as the battery switches on and off, and they're quite heavy duty relays. Now, any suspicion of these relays not working properly or have welded during the driving process of the vehicle, then the checks and measures will ensure that these are, if are malfunctioning or are failed, then the vehicle is prevented from starting again on the next cycle. So you can see many manufacturers choose either the pre-charge on the positive side or negative side. And the real curveball I'm going to throw at you, if you come on the course and you can explain, is some manufacturers don't even use a pre-charge either way, but they still go through the process of checking the contactors and do a pre-charge process, but they do it in a completely different way. So if you come on one of our courses, you can do your level 3, you can do your level 4. Your level 4 will give you an explanation of how this works and you can test it. Or you can come on one of our battery repair courses, so you can get really involved in how the battery operates and how you can repair batteries. Okay, so any of these things you want to check out, go to our website. You can see all the courses that we deliver. Okay, come and see us, ring us up. If you've got any problems or any ideas of what you want to do, or you're in doubt of what is suitable for you, ring us up or drop us a line, email, or go on the inquiries page on our website, and you can look at all the contents of our courses anyway. Have a look at those, decide what's best for you. If you're not sure, as I say, ring us up and we'll chat you through the process. All right, guys, so please look after yourselves. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again in the next episode. So have a look at what you can go as far as electric vehicle training is concerned. All the best. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.